Yes, let's hope for rain.
You know, you've seen the stories. NASA has a dependable space shuttle fleet, but now they're working on the next generation space shuttle. They call it the Venture Star. Right now, NASA has a half-size model of it they call the X-33. It's managed here in Huntsville at the Marshall Space Flight Center. Next month, NASA begins engine testing for the X-33 at the NASA Test Center in South Mississippi. NASA plans the first flight for the X-33 model next summer.
The future of space travel unveiled at Marshall Space Flight Center this afternoon. NASA scientists and their partners showed off the new X-33. The X-33 is a reusable launch vehicle for adventures into space. X-33 will use a new engine called the Aerospike. Today, researchers outlined the schedule for testing the Aerospike engines and the X-33's initial flights.
We look at the upcoming test series where we actually verify the engines and verify the engines are ready to go for flight over the next several months as one of the critical elements of the X-33 program.
NASA will test the new engines at Stennis Space Flight Center in Mississippi. Program leaders announced they hope to launch the X-33 for the first time in February of 2000.
A multi-million-dollar industrial development plan is in the works.
television screen, but a top-notch digital set can show programs up to 3 times more clearly.
Digital TV is just a new way of broadcasting signals to a TV set. Unlike the electromagnetic waves that your TV set is using now, digital TVs use ones and zeros, much like your computer or compact disc player.
And because traditional broadcasts take up more space than ones and zeros can, digital TV gives broadcasters a lot more room to play with.
We got the surround sound, the data casting.
Not all programmers will use the space for better sounded pictures. Some will use it to add new viewing options.
Let's check camera 4 here.
They might let you decide the best angle for viewing a baseball game, or find out more about topics that interest you. It could take years for digital TV to live up to its promise, but no one is promising that the quality of what you get
You press print now, I'll give you a year of free oil change.
will improve it all. Gina Smith, ABC News, New York.
So what are the chances that HD TV will live up to the lofty promises? There are plenty of roadblocks in the way, not the least of which is the fact that there are only a tiny number of sets now used in the United States. Here's ABC's John Martin.
Very few Americans own HDTV sets, and even if they get them, there isn't much to see just yet. True, CBS will show some football games, and ABC is about to show movies like 101 Dalmatians.
Still, the problem goes beyond programming. It's a matter of financial risk. Even though the technology is here, a lot of people in the industry aren't certain it will really catch on.
One reason is price. New HD TV sets can cost up to $10,000.
The number of these that are going to be sold, I don't think is going to go flying out the door yet.
My concern is that if I go with this, it's really expensive. If I go with that, it's a lot cheaper.
So does it make sense for a consumer to buy an expensive set when there's not much to see?
Well, this is a chicken and egg scenario. When does the programming come versus when is the product available?
But it's more than just product. One company, Sinclair Broadcasting, owns nearly 60 stations and says it is unwilling to invest in transmission equipment until the sets are perfected.
I think that we're faced with the potential of a great train wreck when this service gets into the hands of the public.
Sinclair technicians insist screens on the new sets will go blank if rooftop antennas are not perfectly lined up with the signal. There's a dispute. This kind of debate causes one former FCC chairman to denounce the broadcasters.
Most of them are waiting for somebody else to take the lead, somebody else to take the risk, somebody else to make the investment, somebody else to develop the business model. So we got a lot of followers and hardly any leaders.
But even those who do lead are not sure the cable industry will carry their new signals. So it's a big risk.
The capital expenditures for this endeavor are daunting and will continue to be.
Daunting, too, for consumers who wonder where to put their money. If industry doesn't make the system work well and soon, said one analyst, HD TV will probably fizzle. John Martin, ABC News, Washington.
We'll be back in just a moment.
.com, on the web, and America Online.
Just a brief review of the top story. Everybody's top story, of course. John Glenn, he and his 6 colleagues on the shuttle Discovery took off from Cape Canaveral today, and they are now in orbit. Senator Glenn says he is enjoying the show, which obviously means the view of Earth from space, and he feels fine. The launch was not absolutely perfect. A door apparently fell off a compartment that carries the shuttle's drag chute used during landings, but NASA says it won't have any impact. That is our report on World News Tonight. Don't forget Nightline later. I'm Peter Jennings. Have a good evening. Good night.
Roselle guilty of reckless endangerment and sentenced him to 12 months in prison.
Well, Space Shuttle Discovery is in orbit tonight, and the oldest man ever to fly into space is on board. Alicia Smith is covering John Glenn's return to space. Alicia, she joins us now from the Marshall Space Flight Center.
Don, in what has been described as a nearly textbook perfect launch, Shuttle Discovery lifted off into space. The shuttle blasted into orbit a little after 1 o'clock this afternoon. One small problem, the drag chute door used during landing apparently fell off. NASA says the missing door is not a cause for alarm. Discovery can safely land without it. Here in Huntsville, schools turned in to watch Senator Glenn return to space. The students at Challenger Middle School have been studying his first launch in their history class. Today they watch Glenn make history again. And here at the Space and Rocket Center, you can send a message to John Glenn. Visitors can write a note in 2 books located in the lobby. Those books will be sent to Glenn when he returns back to Earth. Lisa Malone of Mission Control has the quote of the day, and it is, 6 American heroes and 1 American legend are in space now. And Don, another Alabama connection there. Malone is a graduate of the University of Alabama.
All right, roll tide. Thanks, Alicia.
How costly can a flood be? Residents in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee may soon find out.
Show you which hoes are better and which ones are born to run.
Live from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, this is 31 News at 10 with Aaron Dacey and Cliff Hill.
John Glenn is back in outer space and sends back his first message. He says, 0G and I feel fine.
Those were the same words he uttered back in 1962 as he was the first American to orbit the Earth. 31's Alicia Smith is live at Huntsville Space and Rocket Center tonight.
Alicia, what are kids saying about Glenn's return to space?
They are intrigued. They can really identify with Glenn. Technology has changed so much from his first space capsule. Glenn had to go back to the classroom to learn the new challenges to fly again. The children at Challenger School still think he's got the right stuff. A gaze, a gleam. Kids watch Glenn return to the stars.
He's 77 years old, and his first time to go up was 36 years ago, and he went in his space capsule by himself. He named it Friendship 7.
Students view Glenn as a pioneer then and now. This time, he's a human test experiment to find out what space can teach us about growing old.
They might be excited to see what happens, what they can find out.
Others are worried if Glenn's taking on too much. Is it healthy for him to undergo stress tests?
It could be, but it may not be. I think it's a privilege that he's able to, since he's so old.
All science begins with observation. This shuttle mission brings the ages together, watching, waiting for Glenn to bring back new discoveries. Teachers know the importance of seeing the time traveler back in action.
And I hope these young people who have so much talent will be able to be in fields like this. And I think it helps to promote their enthusiasm.
This is a day certainly where kids got to watch history unfold. Aaron and Cliff, the kids tell us that they're just as excited to wait and see Discovery land and see John Glenn come back to Earth.
Some smart kids, Alicia.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Alicia.
Let's shift gears right now. Huntsville man is dead tonight. He was stabbed. Police say Bruce Smith stabbed...
Determined. Dependable. This is WAFF 48 News at 5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
John Glenn was the first American to circle the globe. Now history has come full circle with his return to space.
Good evening, I'm Kimberly Essex.
And I'm Mark Thornhill. Thanks for joining us tonight. Our top story at 5, it's a dream come true for one of the original Mercury 7. 36 years later, astronaut John Glenn blasted off into space and into history once again.
Look at those boosters go.
Kids at the Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville watched in awe as Shuttle Discovery lifted off just after 1 o'clock this afternoon. Channel 48's NASA reporter Ryan Korsgaard is covering our top story, and he joins us now live from Cape Canaveral with the details. Ryan?
Mark, you can tell me on the launch clock right behind me that we are now 4 hours into this mission, a mission that was temporarily delayed by a pilot who apparently tried to fly his private plane a little too close to the launch pad. The Air Force got that plane out of the way, and the launch was underway, and John Glenn was on his way back to space. That's our top story today at 5 o'clock.
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
After several delays and 36 years, John Glenn is back in space. He and his crew blasted off from the Kennedy Space Center just after 1. You could feel the ground rumble. The faces of those who watched trembled. Their hero was making history again, this time as the oldest human in space. Soon after launch, the shuttle was moving at 2,900 miles an hour. Minutes later, more than 12,000 miles an hour, and it kept climbing. On the ground, those watching included a former astronaut and senator. Jake Garn is a friend of John Glenn.
I've been trying to figure out how I could stow away.
Instead, he watched from the ground with the hundreds of thousands of others as the mission passed a critical point.
Burnout and separation of Discovery's twin solid rocket boosters.
A big whoop. And then you know it's gone. And of course, the biggest sensation is you're riding the solid rocket motors. And after 2 minutes, when they're kicked over, then it becomes much smoother and much quieter. So that's the biggest difference. They're very loud.
After nearly 9 minutes, that roar got the senator and his crew into orbit, some 72 miles above the Earth, a place few have gone, a place where a second trip is rare, a place no one has gone at 77 years. And we know that John Glenn and his crew are beginning their experiments tonight. Basically, they're making the transition between using the ship as a rocket and using it now as a laboratory. Something that we all thought that this was a perfect liftoff, and it was, except for one thing. We're told there was apparently a problem with a door that is on the back of the ship. That is where a parachute comes out for landing. Apparently that door came off during launch, so now the technicians here are looking at videotapes, trying to see exactly what happened and see if they need to change the area that it does come back to. Right now it is scheduled to land here at the Kennedy Space Center in 9 days. At the Kennedy Space Center, Ryan Korsgaard, WAFF 48 News.
Of course, Ryan, you're the only television reporter here in the Valley covering today's launch. And what did it feel like as you watched that shuttle lift off? And I'm wondering, did you feel the ground shake under your feet?
You do feel the ground shake, and as you could tell this afternoon, the sun has, of course, gone down, and it's hard to see across, but there's actually a lake between here and actually where the launch pad is, and you could feel the ground shake. But as far as how I felt, and I think everybody else here, it was a lot of pride. A lot of us, this was our first shuttle launch, and to see that 7 human beings could go into space with something that was built, and for a big part built in Huntsville, makes you very proud.
I would imagine you saw a lot of smiles and a few tears today.
Certainly did.
Ryan, thank you.
Well, today was also a prideful and historic day for Madison County School. Monrovia Elementary is one of 5 schools in the state with an experiment on board the shuttle mission. Our team coverage continues with Channel 48's Christina Youngerman, who was at Monrovia for liftoff. She joins us now from the newsroom. Christina, how was Monrovia picked?
Well, Kimberly, a student's father is a scientist at UAH, and he works closely with NASA. So he asked whether the school wanted to take part in this mission, and of course, the answer was yes.
3, 2, 1,
It was exciting. That was very exciting for us.
Exciting for all at Monrovia who watched history in the making. Not only is a poster with their signatures riding with John Glenn, they also have a seed experiment on board. 4th grade teacher Suzanne Woodruff chose winter wheat and Wisconsin fast plant to make the journey into space.
It is a laboratory seed, which is for classroom use, and it goes from seed back to seed in 8 weeks. So we thought that would be easily implemented into the curriculum. And winter wheat is a seed that is planted in this area.
Once the seeds return to Earth, students will study the effects space has on growth.
It'll be fun to explore the seeds and see what happened to them. I'm really happy that our school is one of them that was picked, that we will get to study them and learn more about them.
Before liftoff of this historic mission, teachers and students met a real-life astronaut who's been blasted into space 3 times.
That's what we use on the floor of the space shuttle.
Dan Bursch is scheduled to live on the International Space Station. He recently met his mentor, John Glenn.
I think it's great inspiration for anybody that wants to pursue a dream, such of a dream that he's had, to go into space again.
UAH scientists with the Hands-on Science Project like the idea of sending Wisconsin fast plant seeds into space so much, they plan to send them into space again. In the newsroom, Christina Youngerman, WAFF 48 News.
Well, Christina, we could see that the kids were excited, but I'm interested to know how you felt when you saw the Space Shuttle Discovery lift off this afternoon.
Well, Kimberly, I felt just like one of the kids there. It was like seeing it through their eyes, and it was truly a day to remember. In fact, my ears are still ringing from all their cheers. It was very exciting.
It is a day to remember. Christina, thank you.
Students throughout the Decatur school system watched the shuttle launch from their classrooms. Students in every classroom at Woodmead Elementary were tuned in and watching closely. After several delays, the kids clapped and cheered as the shuttle took off. Woodmead students have a special interest in this shuttle launch. School Secretary Linda Hood and the school mascot Cubby Bear are in Florida for that historical event. Now to wrap up our top story at 5, astronaut John Glenn and the crew of Discovery lifted off safely just after 1 o'clock. At 77, John Glenn is the oldest man to fly in space. Glenn will be the subject of 10 of the 83 experiments scheduled for the mission. Be sure to join 48 News and NASA reporter Ryan Korsgaard for exclusive live coverage in our 6 and 10 o'clock newscasts from Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Well, turning now to weather. Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Jay Prater joins us now with your first a big old party.
There you go.
Big old party.
That's our time for now. We appreciate you being with us.
Let's take another look before we leave at John Glenn's historic return to space.
4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
Houston Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
The next event will be burnout and separation of Discovery's twin solid rocket boosters.
A historic and thrilling day, the launch of Discovery.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
John Glenn, hero and legend, returns to space.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, reporting tonight from Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Good evening. John Glenn's idea of life support is to be wired into the Space Shuttle Discovery and rocket around the Earth at thousands of miles an hour. And that's just where he is tonight, successfully in orbit with 6 other astronauts after a launch here today that had a couple of minor hitches, but nothing that should keep this from being a full mission. The liftoff was delayed for about 20 minutes, but then it lit up the sunny Florida skies.
1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
Houston Discovery, roll program.
Glenn, the oldest astronaut ever at 77, does travel tonight with an experienced crew. STS-95 is commanded by 42-year-old Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Kurt Brown. Discovery is piloted by 38-year-old Steve Lindsay. Lindsay's flight engineer is Scott Parazinski. He's also the chief doctor on board. The 37-year-old will keep a close watch on Glenn's health. Stephen Robinson, the payload commander, is 43 years old. He'll oversee all of the mission's experiments. And 2 foreign-born astronauts from Japan, 46-year-old Dr. Chiaki Mukai, and from Spain, Pedro Duque, 35 years of age. With President Clinton, fellow senators, his wife Annie, and his family looking on, Senator Glenn and the Discovery crew today rode into history. NBC's Robert Hager was here for the liftoff. He joins me again tonight. Robert?
Tom, the shuttle is 350 miles up there now. John Glenn has sent back word that he's feeling fine and awed by the views. His commander reports that Glenn's been smiling all the way. Here's how it all unfolded on this historic day. 6:28 a.m. The shuttle waits, majestic in the mist and first light of day. 9:36, the crew, after a late call for breakfast, seen for the first time, smiles all around. Glenn with the Japanese astronaut Chiaki Mukai. 10:15, suiting up. Thumbs up from the commander, Kurt Brown. Away from Dr. Scott Parazinski, medical officer on the flight. Glenn calls him Igor because he's in charge of drawing blood samples. At 10:45, the crew emerges. A van brings them to the launch pad, helicopter following for security. 11 a.m., all aboard. Commander Kurt Brown in place on the flight deck now. John Glenn preparing to join the others. Radio checks, too.
Welcome aboard, John Glenn.
And an emotional radio message from the astronaut who first wished Glenn well on the radio 36 years ago, Scott Carpenter.
At this point in the count, it seems appropriate to say to the shuttle Discovery crew, good luck, have a safe flight, and to say once again, Godspeed, John Glenn.
Launch status check.
1:57 p.m., final checks. Everything looks great.
OTC, go. TVC, tank and boosters are go. TTC, go.
Launch team is go. Your vehicle's ready. The weather's beautiful out there. On behalf of the entire launch team, you and the crew of Discovery have a great mission.
Then suddenly,
we have unidentified aircraft in the box.
private pilots jockeying for position to watch accidentally violate NASA's no-fly zone. Countdown clock stopped. Commander Brown annoyed. But now the count resumes.
And liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
Tonight, hours after launch, the shuttle sends back pictures, experiments opening in the bay, and stunning pictures of Earth as John Glenn calls.
Hello, Houston. This is PS2, and they let me get sprung out of the middeck for a little while. We're just going by Hawaii, and that is absolutely gorgeous.
Commander Brown.
John has a smile on his face, and it goes from one ear to the other one, and we haven't been able to remove it yet.
Great news, since the first part of the flight is supposed to be the most stressful. Tomorrow's a work day, experiments geared up, what the flight's all about. But tonight, John Glenn seems euphoric, and the rest of the crew as well. Tom?
Thanks very much. Robert Hager here tonight at the Kennedy Space Center. This was another of those moments when the world's attention was focused on an idea and a man who wanted to make it come true. Time again when America showed off its best side, not its sordid side. Here's NBC's Bob Fall.
It is a journey of science and sentiment, and everywhere it seemed, the nation stopped whatever it was doing and watched.
Traveling at a speed of 2,900 miles an hour.
Wish John Glenn Godspeed all the way.
If only for a few fiery moments, the country was united.
The tingle and the earth goosebumps. And
then cheers from the Air and Space Museum in Washington alongside John Glenn's original capsule. Applause, too, from the Florida beaches overflowing with spectators.
I just think it's the most wonderful thing I've ever seen.
Makes you proud to be an American.
From the giant TV screen atop Times Square in New York City to a Maryland community center where children counted down.
3, 2, 1.
Children everywhere watching in wide-eyed wonder, all eyes on the Glenn launch.
I thought it was amazing to see something like this.
And the chord struck was not just patriotic. There were salutes from a pub on London's west side.
If you're young enough and you feel young enough, do what you want.
And also from Moscow, where the mission was monitored by 72-year-old Konstantin Feokistov, Russia's oldest cosmonaut. We have to learn about our limits, he says. It is not a waste of money, it's a work for the future. 36 years ago, John Glenn thrilled us with the sense of possibility. This time, he thrilled older Americans when he left conventional definitions on the launch pad.
Every time you hear a word as old, old gets older. I just think it's cool. I should get so old and do such a cool thing.
For this flight, there is a common bond between older and younger Americans. Pride.
My dreams is to be a spaceman too, like John Glenn.
American heroes. You know, we need more of them.
A hero going back up there, and for a moment at least, making us feel better down here. Bob Fall, NBC News, Washington.
Presidents don't go into space, but they all realize they can get a political ride out of a successful launch, especially one with such a high hero quotient. President Clinton is no exception, and NBC's David Bloom was with him here today. David?
Tom, President Clinton said he could feel the roof rumble beneath his feet as he watched today's liftoff. And he expressed the hope that today's public relations bonanza for NASA could help build support for a new international space station that could cost American taxpayers upwards of $100 billion.
Liftoff of Discovery with a crew of...
Watching the liftoff from a rooftop 3.5 miles from the launch site, President Clinton called it a great day for America, a great day for our senior citizens. Later, he gave NASA employees a thumbs up and argued that John Glenn's return to space offers the next generation of Americans the chance to dream big and, yes, costly dreams about future space exploration.
This mission is going to give America a chance to see what you do through new eyes.
Priority number one, a new multi-billion-dollar international space station. Construction set to begin with the next space shuttle flights later this year. Ironically, John Glenn is back in space tonight for much the same reason he was grounded 36 years ago. Back then, President Kennedy thought that Glenn was too big a hero to risk on another mission. But tonight, President Clinton and NASA are basking in John Glenn's status. And who can blame Mr. Clinton if some of Glenn's glory reflects onto him, what with congressional elections just 5 days away? Tom?
David Bloom tonight. Thank you very much. Up next, the day's other news, including a controversial breast cancer drug now oppressed of a militant Islamic leader. Where do they go from here?
Ignition.
First, another voice answers the question, where were you in '62?
The noise was so great that I can't describe it. The vibration was so great it rattled the coins in my pockets. And watching that huge rocket lift itself off the ground, in short, it was one hell of a sight.
For 97 years, GMC has designed trucks for people who drove them not because they were trained.
The special view from his hometown. Their local hero does it again. But first, where were you in 1962?
You just had that great sense of not only urgency, but confidence. It was a very confident society that came of age with that launch. Back then, yeah, it seemed like anything was possible.
Why does Tums control acid faster than Pepsid AC? Because they wanted
personal information about you. Dateline Friday on NBC.
NBC News in Depth tonight, John Glenn's launch into the history books and the view of it all from his hometown of New Concord, Ohio. Ohio is in fact known as the birthplace of aviation. After all, the Wright brothers were from there. Ohio also has produced more astronauts than any other state. 23, including Senator Glenn and Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon. Today, New Concord, right in the middle of the state, was in the middle of all the excitement. The world watching them as they watched their hometown hero fly skyward again. In Depth tonight, here's NBC's Jim Abbott.
The quiet streets of New Concord, Ohio erupt as 1,000 middle Americans, many too young to remember John Glenn's first flight, watched their native son blast off. A hometown focused on prayer in space.
3, 2, 1.
One of the first lessons here, American heroes. Mrs. McKendry's kindergarten class, homemade spacesuits on, action figures ready for launch.
John Glenn in his suit, John Glenn in his own clothes.
Glenn's tiny hometown, 75 miles east of Columbus, a college town, home of the Fighting Muskies. Glenn played here, went to school here, married here, and since his days as a combat pilot, revered here.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
Pride? Yes. Do I have pride? You bet I do.
At 94, Ellis Deitch, John Glenn's only surviving high school teacher. The science student he remembers was not a standout, but the most determined, ambitious boy ever to sit in his class, a quality he says launched him into space twice.
He's not doing that for glory. He has enough glory without that.
John Glenn still owns his boyhood home. He comes back here at least once a year. His parents have passed away. The house is now rented. But it was here on Friendship Drive, named after his Mercury capsule, where a young John Glenn first thought about flight. Lloyd White,
boyhood friend, and best man at the Glenn's wedding, remembers making model airplanes, hundreds of them, in 8-year-old Johnny Glenn's basement.
We didn't know what an astronaut was.
But he did know that Glenn would end up doing something inspiring. His high school yearbook, a list of clubs and teams longer than any of his classmates. Lorley Porter leads an effort to build the John Glenn Museum in New Concord.
John and Annie Glenn grew up in a community that expected you to pull your weight, to do your job.
Heroes often come from small towns. Charles Lindbergh, a farm in Minnesota, the Wright brothers from southern Ohio. Historian Stephen Ambrose says Glenn has the small-town spirit of breakout adventure.
He dreamed big dreams, and he got out of that little town, and he went out and he lived those big dreams.
In fact, today, the only mystery in the hometown that launched a national hero is what will John Glenn dream.
The lottery education's best bet. Join me for my special report, all new at 6.
If there's a natural connection in the world, it is kids and space. And this flight was a teacher's dream. A man who looks like a grandfather, or depending on the kid's age, a great-grandfather. Tonight, NBC's Bob Dotson and some kids who may one day get to go to Mars.
John Glenn may be the oldest space scientist, but he's carrying the dreams of some of the youngest. Carrying an experiment designed by 7-year-olds.
Cool. What's it up to on the black number? 200.
It measures the effect of the sun's heat in zero gravity.
The temperature is going to go up.
The children have filled 20 3-inch vials with popcorn, paper clips, and crayons.
I think it's going to turn taupe.
Second graders at Dowell Elementary School in Marietta, Georgia, were selected in a competition that included college students.
It was a balance to get something that the kids could still understand, but yet that was scientific.
I think it's going to turn out great.
The kids are also building a nearly full-size replica of Glenn's first space capsule, the one that flew nearly 30 years before they were born.
He, takes lots of risks.
So they have posted some last-minute reminders.
Bring some Band-Aids. And some pillows. Be safe and may God be with you.
NASA hopes all this will reignite interest in space, perhaps inspire some to become astronauts.
It's kind of scary, and I would panic a lot.
8, 7, 6, 5.
I'll go.
4, 3.
Even with John Glenn?
Really, I don't think anyone's too old to do anything.
2, 1.
Or too young. Bob Dotson, NBC News, Marietta, Georgia.
More reminders that, like so much else from the time of John Glenn's first flight, the idea of age is not what it once was. Grandfather John Glenn, who once before took us to places we had not been, is doing it again tonight in a new way. The debate over the scientific merits of his mission is honest and worthwhile, but it's also worthwhile to have an excuse to cheer a man and his dream, to admire his family, and to watch in awe as American invention takes us to another frontier. That's Nightly News for this Thursday. I'm Tom Brokaw, and I'll see you back in New York tomorrow night.
Discovery's crew is definitely ready to go, and we would like you to proceed.
Good luck. Have a safe flight. And to say once again, Godspeed, John Glenn.
We have a go for engine start. 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
Houston Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Dependable. This is WAFF 48 News at 6.
4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
A breathtaking launch on an historic day.
Houston Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Good evening. I'm Kimberly Essex.
And I'm Tom Kennemer. Thank you for being with us. Our top story at 6, bravery, perseverance, and heroism.
today is a day so many have worked for and no one will soon forget. The Space Shuttle Discovery lifted off successfully this afternoon, sending 7 courageous astronauts, one of them John Glenn, into the final frontier. 48 News NASA reporter Ryan Korsgaard joined us now live from the Kennedy Space Center with more on John Glenn's historic return to space. And Ryan, it was a remarkable day.
It certainly has been. We are now nearly 5 hours into this mission, a mission that was temporarily delayed. There was apparently a pilot who had flown his private aircraft into a protected area. The Air Force quickly got that plane out of the way, and John Glenn was on his way back to space. That's our top story tonight at 6 o'clock.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
Shuttle Discovery returns John Glenn to space, a place where he made history. Now the first American to orbit the Earth is the oldest human in space. Hundreds of thousands of people watched Glenn and his crew blast off from the Kennedy Space Center. It took less than 9 minutes for the shuttle to climb 72 miles above the Earth. The man who was once told he was too old to fly is 77. John Glenn is in orbit again. I'm jealous. Gordon Cooper stood alongside John Glenn as a Mercury 7 astronaut. At 71, Cooper told me he wants to go up again, but he'll settle for days like this that remind him of his 22 orbits around the Earth.
Ever since it launched before, I've had a couple of launches. It certainly has already brought back memories watching what's going on.
But Cooper's ride aboard the Faith 7 rocket was nothing like this. John Glenn and his crew are now beginning a 9-day adventure through space and an endless journey into the history books.
And while it looked like a perfect takeoff today, there was one problem. We understand the door that holds the parachute in, a parachute that is used when the orbiter comes back to Earth and actually lands. Apparently that door simply came off, so right now experts are looking at it to see if they should in fact land back here at the Kennedy Space Center. In Florida, Ryan Korsgaard, WAFF 48 News. Tom?
Ron, I know this is the first time you have seen a shuttle launch. What was it like for you to see this?
Well, it was incredible. I mean, we are about 3-4 miles away from the actual launch pad and as close as really anyone is. And you could feel the ground rumble, but, you know, you were really proud simply because human beings created the machine that was able to take, 7 astronauts into the orbit around the Earth. So it was a big feeling of pride, and there were a lot of tears in the crowd.
A lot of people from Huntsville also helped with that launch, too. All right. Thanks for your report.
You're exactly right.
On New at 6, the people responsible for making sure that the rocket engines that launched Glenn into orbit worked are based right here in Huntsville. For the first time, television cameras were allowed inside the Huntsville Operations Support Center. 48 News was the only Huntsville television station allowed inside. The engineers in this room monitored the twin booster rockets and the 3-man shuttle engines. The 3 main shuttle engines, that is. When the shuttle Discovery reached orbit, a loud cheer erupted from the Huntsville team, including 20-year-old NASA veteran Jim Hester.
You started back during the Saturn days. Now you're here in the shuttle days. Right. What does this mean, this launch with John Glenn, with the crew? What does this mean for you?
Oh, it's just wonderful. It's, a thing out of the past, but I'm so glad that he could make this flight.
Are you pleased with how the engines performed?
I'm pleased with everything, with all our hardware, with all Marshall's hardware.
As the launch team prepares for the next mission, a group of Huntsville researchers will now start working on experiments that will be conducted on board Discovery. Astronaut hopefuls at the Space and Rocket Center enjoyed watching the heroes lift off this afternoon.
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes.
Amid claps and shouts this afternoon, space campers cheered for the Discovery crew and a successful launch. Besides kids from America, campers from all over the world were in today's audience. We'll stay with 48 News for continuous coverage of John Glenn's historic return to space. Our coverage will continue tonight on 10 at 10. We'll have another live report with the latest from the Kennedy Space Center. Tom?
A knife attack in a Huntsville apartment kills a 20-year-old man just before 10.
This is WAFF 48 News at 10.
Incredible video from inside the middeck of Shuttle Discovery. John Glenn, who's sitting in the middle, made history for the second time in 36 years. And tonight, he's surpassing his previous flight every second. Good evening, I'm Kimberly Essex.
And I'm Mark Thornhill. You're watching 10 at 10, where you get tonight's top stories and tomorrow's weather, all in the first 10 minutes. And our 10 at 10 top story, of course, John Glenn's return to space.
4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery.
Glenn and 6 crewmates blasted off into orbit aboard Space Shuttle Discovery today. Millions on television watched, with so many people sharing the same sentiment. Godspeed, John Glenn, the same words spoken back in 1962. 10 at 10's Ryan Korsgaard joins us now live from Cape Canaveral, Florida, with a wrap-up of today's historic event.
Mark, tonight, John Glenn and the rest of his crew are asleep aboard the Shuttle Discovery. As you can tell by the countdown clock behind me, right now they're around 9 hours into this mission. A mission that was delayed. That was because a private aircraft apparently got in the way of the launch zone. Once it was cleared away, John Glenn was on his way back to space. That's tonight's 10 at 10 top story.
Hello, Houston. This is TS2. I mean, let me get sprung out of the middeck for a little while. We're just going by Hawaii, and that is absolutely gorgeous.
John Glenn makes a long-distance call to tell adoring Americans what it looks like from on top of the world. This is what he and his crew will see for the next 8 days. A view he waited 36 years to see a second time.
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
With that, John Glenn became the oldest man in space. You could feel the ground rumble, see the pride swell, and hear the excitement as hundreds of thousands of people tried to get a look at their hero making history again.
Out the words, "Go, baby, go."
Former network news anchor Walter Cronkite was here when Glenn became the first man to orbit the Earth. He was back to see Glenn off a second time, but next time he wants Glenn to see him off.
What I'd really like to do is go out to the moon. I'd like to see the Earth rise over that moon horizon, that great blue globe, the only color in the whole dark of space. Must be a tremendous sight.
Holy cow! Astronaut Roger Crouch knows that sight well. He flew on the shuttle in 1983 and again in 1994.
It's like the best swimming pool you've ever been in, where the water's just perfect, and there's no friction or no resistance, so you just push off the side and just float to wherever you want to go, and it's a couch potato's dream.
But Glenn will have little time to sit down before this. The picture that no one his age has ever seen before.
Row G, and I feel fine.
And while that launch looked perfect, there was apparently one problem. A door that holds a parachute onto the back apparently came off. The parachute is used when the shuttle lands, and right now it's scheduled to land at Kennedy Space Center in 8 days. Right now, the experts are taking a look to see if they should move that landing. Live at the Kennedy Space Center, Ryan Korsgaard, WAFF 48 News.
So many of us, Ryan, including me, have never had the chance to see a launch in person. You've been waiting quite a long time, too, right?
I have. A lady that lived next door, actually, when I was growing up, her son is a doctor and checked the astronauts out before their shuttle flights. So since I was about 3 or 4, I've been waiting for this, and it was incredible. I mean, there were so many people here, here with media credentials in this area, but hundreds of thousands outside this area lining the beach. Tough to find hotel rooms nearby, and that was simply because so many people were wanting to see this launch. Mark?
It's been a big day. Ryan, thank you.
John Glenn is in orbit tonight, all because of some engineers from Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. The engineers in this room monitor the twin booster rockets and the 3 main shuttle engines when the shuttle blasted off. For the first time, television cameras were allowed inside the Huntsville Operations Support Center. 48 News was the only Huntsville television station allowed inside. 4th grade science students at Monrovia Elementary School in Madison County have an experiment aboard Discovery tonight. They chose winter wheat and Wisconsin fast plant to make the journey into space. Once the seeds return to Earth, students will study the effects space has on growth. Monrovia Elementary is one of 5 schools in the state with experiments aboard the shuttle.